welcome here to a Spotlight Wake Up Call special presentation here with Noreen Morris, the commissioner of the NEC, the Northeast Conference, where LeMoyne calls home. As you know, Wake Up Call, the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of LeMoyne College. And we've been covering the NEC for many years, thanks to Noreen giving me the opportunity to speak with her about everything that happens at the NEC and about that leadership and the mission of the NEC. So very, very much always gracious to have Noreen on the show. Noreen, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Always good to connect.
And so, Noreen, we got a lot of things to unpack, a lot of things to get into. First and foremost, congratulations on the addition of Chicago State and the Cougars to the NEC.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a tremendous day on Tuesday when we rolled that out in a very energetic and enthusiastic crowd at Chicago State. So we started out with a bang, and we're super excited to get them involved and engaged and ready to play next year.
So what was it about Chicago State that stuck out to you?
Chicago State, obviously, as the only D1 independent at the time, was appealing to have an initial conversation. And I wasn't quite sure where that conversation would go, if there would be interest from them, and if we would, in turn have interest in them joining. We were just quote unquote, kicking the tires to start. But the more we talked, I had great conversations with Monique Carroll, who's the athletic director. They were using a Renaissance and Herb Courtney as a consultant. And, as we started talking through kind of the mission of the NEC, how we operate, what's important to us, really resonated with them. Yeah. And then we were able to kind of move forward and then get our presidents involved in the initial conversation with President Scott at Chicago State and our presidents. There was so much alignment between, what we want athletics to do for an institution and how conference can serve those institutions. So the more we talked, the more we learned about each other. It just seemed like a really natural fit. And the fact that we can get into Chicago, the number 3 media market in the country, certainly helps the exposure for everybody involved, institutionally and conference-wise.
You said that Chicago State aligned with the NEC, that their president and the conversation with them aligned with the presidents already in the NEC. It's called the Northeast Conference, so you've stayed pretty true to that, but now moving to the Midwest with Chicago State, what was it that aligned so well, in your opinion?
I think it's just how we envision what athletics should be for an institution, and that we've consistently messaged that it's a holistic experience. Yeah. That we are interested in athletics, but in the role it plays in the development of student athletes. And that athletics should not be the entirety of their experience. It should be a part of it. And that, the way we approach our strategic plan, we outlined the 4 goals we have with our strategic plan, which was increasing brand exposure. So obviously going into Chicago does that for us. And that's in addition to the number 1 New York market. Chicago's 3, and then Boston is the 8th media market. And so that really helped. And Chicago State, they've been an independent, and their travel schedules they're all over the place, trying to find games in all those sports. And so their ability to have a consistent set of opponents and the ability to have a consistent presence in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania market for them was appealing. So it's good for both of us. The student athlete experience, that's our second goal, is to enhance our student athlete experience. So this will allow the Chicago State student athletes to participate in conference regular season, participate in conference championships, and have access to the NCAA championships, which is something they really don't have currently. And on the flip side, it allows our student athletes to travel to Chicago, to have that experience, to visit a city that they may never have visited prior, right? And so we're kind of expanding their exposure and their experience. And Chicago State is 15, 20 minutes from Midway, maybe 30 minutes from O'Hare, direct flights from all of our markets right into Chicago. So travel is, while it's, you're getting on a plane, the total travel time might be less than getting on a bus and driving from Stonehill to St. Francis U, for instance. So the travel time itself may not be as bad. And so that's really helpful for us. Then I'll just continue on down the line with our strategic plan. So I've already gone over the increased brand awareness, enhancing the student athlete experience. Our third goal is commitment to basketball, which is our premier sport. Obviously, FDU put us on the map last year, right? Even more so with their big win over Purdue. And Chicago State has pretty strong basketball programs, and they have a really great arena. So for us to travel out to Chicago State and play in that arena in the city of Chicago certainly helps with the sport of basketball. And then our final goal revolves around DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, and that we have been actively engaged in DE&I initiatives at the campus and conference levels. And we have really put a lot of resources into that area. And that Chicago State is a predominantly Black institution, was very interested in that alignment and about our current relationships with some of the other HBCUs and the MEAC as associate members. We have 6 of the 8 MEAC schools as associate members with us now. So there was just lots of alignment on, what is athletics supposed to do for an institution, and how can that match up with the NEC and with Chicago State.
Yeah, speaking here with NEC Commissioner Noreen Morris in this Wake Up Call special presentation, as you discuss these different elements and these different pieces, and I appreciate you breaking down all of the things that made Chicago State make sense to come into the NEC. Like you said, you have connections to the MEAC. You and I have spoken about the dancing shoes that were the dancing slippers that became the dancing sneakers, and we put a nice blue color on them for the Northeast Conference. It seems like you're wearing them all the time. So I want to know, are they slippers? Are they dancing shoes? Are they sneakers? What do they look like today? Are they on? And is this connection to the MEAC going to potentially deliver more full-time than part-time?
Yeah, I'm going to go with dancing sneakers, and because that's just the thing these days, right? The really high-end fancy sneakers that you see folks wearing, whether it's on the sidelines or in the boardroom or at events. So I've got my blue glittery fancy sneakers. So they're firmly on, they're tied up, they're laced up. Okay. And they're ready to go. And in Chicago State, I'm gonna have to try to find a pair of green ones. But I think Chicago State, the addition there really helps us then take off and run in those shoes.
And what can you say about those MEAC connections?
Yeah, with the MEAC, obviously we have a number of MEAC schools as associate members in sports such as baseball, women's soccer, women's lacrosse, golf, the 2 golfs. And so I think that, again, Chicago is a primarily Black institution. That's a designation out of the education department at the federal level. I think that was just appealing for them to know that we are committed to providing student athletes of color access to NEC championships and NCAA championships, and we're doing it for the right reasons and to provide every student athlete an opportunity.
You and I didn't get a chance to speak on this when it had happened, but to see Sacred Heart and Merrimack heading out of the conference to go to the MAC, the MAAC, and we also know St. Francis Brooklyn obviously ended their athletic program. So not something, when St. Francis Brooklyn did that, heartbreaking to so many people that rocked so many different veins of the earth, because, you have alumni all over the place, and potential students and student athletes and teachers and staff and administration. Of course, you have the connections inside of the conference of the NEC. And then Merrimack finally goes through their 4-year hiatus. And I would think that you at the NEC are thinking, great, now this is the team that would have been in the NCAA tournament over FDU. I mean, we can't wait to see what they're going to become. They're doing well at a bunch of different sports. And Sacred Heart, what they've been to this conference over so many years. Bring me into the St. Francis Brooklyn to kind of reflect back on that tragic news that we've seen with certain colleges and universities, and then to go into the Merrimack and Sacred Heart. Was it a shock, and just your reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean, the St. Francis Brooklyn, as you said, it was heartbreaking. But what is uplifting is that as they went through that process and in the last year of competition, their student athletes reacted so well to that news. And every student I talked to talked about their terrific experience as a student athlete at St. Francis Brooklyn, and the support that they received from their administration trying to find new homes or to complete their education at St. Francis Brooklyn without the athletics piece. So I would say from something, bad came something good, which is, being able to reflect on the positive aspects of their experience and taking those positive aspects to their next chapter, whatever that was, whether it was just finishing their degree at St. Francis Brooklyn or moving on and playing at another institution. And I'll give one example. Sokol, his name I'm gonna not be able to pronounce, so I won't try. Sokol was our men's student athlete of the year last year. He played soccer at St. Francis Brooklyn. He since went on and finished his career at University of Nevada, Omaha, or Omaha, Nevada. And we've kept in touch. In fact, I'm talking to him this afternoon. He wants to get into college athletics, and he's just been super positive about the experience he had with the St. Francis Brooklyn and the Northeast Conference, so much so that we've kept in touch, and we'll continue to work and try to, get him to his next chapter. And then, Irma Garcia landed at Manhattan, and all of her senior staff have found jobs, and her coaches, a couple of them are at LIU. So, I mean, I think that while it was heartbreaking, folks have, springboarded to the next step. With Merrimack and Sacred Heart, also disappointing and heartbreaking to see a long 30-year member of our league in Sacred Heart move on to another conference. With Merrimack, we gave them the opportunity to join Division I. They made noise right away. Right when they came in, they won men's soccer and men's basketball in their first year, and obviously was in the championship game for men's basketball in their last year. Disappointing to see that they move on so quickly. But every institution has to determine what's best for them at that moment in time, and they both felt that that was the best move for them at that time. So, wish them luck in their next chapter. And as you see, we've already pivoted. We've brought in Chicago State. We've brought in Robert Morris for football and men's lacrosse, and we are also able to pull in Cleveland State and VMI for men's lacrosse too, to shore up that men's lacrosse AQ. So we've been working hard since the announcement, and kudos to our presidential leadership, our membership committee, and our athletic administrators, because they've really engaged and bought into our new vision. And it's not been 6 weeks since that announcement, and I think we've done a great job of showing that we can be stable and that we're going to move in another direction, but a positive direction.
Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Bryan and Stratton Syracuse Bobcats. You can find the Bobcats every single month in the Bobcat Buzz with student athletes, coaches, and administration all throughout the year. Teams that have fought for national championships, won national championships, as well as teams that have advanced to the national tournament, and an up-and-coming baseball program that started last season, as well as every awesome thing that they have to offer, including esports. The Bobcat Buzz, giving you the student athletes, coaches, and administration unique stories that only the Bobcats can tell. You can find all of this by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and clicking subscribe, or simply searching at wakeupcall DT on YouTube. Our BSC Syracuse playlist gives you our Bobcats on the YouTube channel. You can also find them on wakeupcalldt.com underneath exclusive partners in the BSC Syracuse page. For more information, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. And as always, go Bobcats. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville Bees. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you. Looking for your next ride? Look no further than Great Lakes Honda City, located on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Serving our community for decades, their new and pre-owned vast array of vehicles are available to you Monday through Saturday on site. To search from home, shop at GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Call 315-365-5576 to set up an appointment. That's 315-365-5576 for Great Lakes Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Great cars, great people, Great Lakes.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success at Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognize that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career, it's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. To you, Noreen, as a leader of the NEC, what was more heartbreaking? Losing a member of decades that has been synonymous with the NEC as Sacred Heart, or losing a member who you gave an opportunity to leave Division II to Division I in Merrimack?
Yeah, for different reasons, they decided to move on, and it's either way, it's always sad to see a member move on. So again, I just wish them luck in their new chapter. And I know from our student athlete advisory committee that the student athletes who represented both those institutions had a great experience with us. And we know that we've created some really good lifelong memories for those student athletes. And again, just wish both of those schools the best of luck in their next year when they move to a new home.
You brought up the fact that you were looking to shore up men's lacrosse. The last time you and I spoke, it was about having a plan. You had a plan. You said the plan's going to get rolled out in a couple of weeks. Then Merrimack and Sacred Heart do their thing, and you have to have a plan after the plan. But you had a plan after the plan, and like you said, pivoting to what you can do now and looking at men's lacrosse. So we look at your full-time members. We also look at the fact that, and you had mentioned at Cleveland State coming in for lacrosse, men's lacrosse at 24, 25. Also looking at Detroit Mercy coming in at the same time for that, and Robert Morris and VMI. Just to go into what those schools presented to you in VMI, Robert Morris, Detroit Mercy, and Cleveland State, and to have that plan B for men's lacrosse and to be able to execute it so quickly.
Yeah, so the Robert Morris, Cleveland State, and Detroit Mercy are all in the Horizon League, and they were all playing together in the A-Sun as associate members in men's lacrosse. So plan A, involved reaching out to all three of them to see what their interest would be in coming over as a group. And for a myriad of reasons, that didn't happen. So we were able to bring in Detroit Mercy and VMI to start to get us to our 6 D1 institutions plus LeMoyne as the reclassifying institution. So when we lost Sacred Heart and Merrimack, I reached back out to both of those institutions to say, hey, landscapes change a little bit. Would love to reignite those discussions and see if there's something we can do to keep all the Horizon League teams together and as associate members in a conference. And those conversations were good, and we were able to not overcome, but to address some of the concerns that came up in the first go around, and we're able to come to a great outcome with having those three schools come join us in men's lacrosse and bringing back Robert Morris in football.
And when you talk about bringing in Robert Morris in football, the football side of things, just to explain to people that don't know, I know that you've had an alliance and kind of a communication with other conferences to create this world where the NEC can live and thrive. And where are things at with that? I know bringing in Robert Morris, but where NEC football is, some of your full-time members have football, some do not. So what does this look like in the grand scope? How would you describe NEC football as we step forward?
Yeah, NEC football looks very similar to what we've looked like in the past, where not all of our members sponsor football. And so we still have two schools that don't sponsor football. That would be LeMoyne and Fairleigh Dickinson. And we've got Stonehill as a reclassifying member. And they've had some really big wins. One big win over Duquesne towards the end of the season that pushed our championship game to the Merrimack at Duquesne, which Duquesne won. And we've always had Duquesne as an associate member. So having an associate member in football is not new to us. Yeah. So for us to think about bringing another associate member was, that's not out of the normal for us for football. And Robert Morris, having been a member in years past, we were familiar with them and familiar with their coach. And Bernard Clark is a great coach, and Chris King has got great leadership over there at Robert Morris. So it was a perfect time for us to reignite those conversations around football.
And for you, like you said, Fairleigh Dickinson and LeMoyne still do not have football. Would you like to have all of your full-time members have football? Is it something that you kind of put those sneakers on and say, hey guys, maybe think about it?
Yeah, every institution needs to look at its own kind of mission, its own positioning, the ability for resources and facilities and everything else, and look at their enrollment. That's, in some cases, adding football, that's a heavy lift.
Yeah. Not
only from just operationally, in terms of facility, locker room space, the increased needs around strength and conditioning, athletic training. You're talking, 125 new student athletes, and they're all male student athletes. So from a Title IX perspective, if you add 125 male student athletes, that's likely going to tip the scales a bit on your Title IX compliance. So then you've got to then add more sports on the women's side. Yeah. So that's, to say, okay, everybody in the NEC has to have football, that is, it would be ill-advised in that they may not be positioned to do that and nor want to. So I would never want to force an institution to add football if they don't have it, because there's so many moving parts and so many ripple effects with the addition of such a large program.
Speaking here with NEC Commissioner Noreen Morris in this Wake Up Call special presentation. Noreen, as we look through all the different things that are going on and in realignment and reclassification, there's a lot of different notes based on what we've talked about and other things that are on my mind. But one of the pieces I really want to get to is it seems like in realignment and in reclassification, you are either the aggressor or the aggressee. You are either actively pursuing or you're actively being pursued. Where would you say the NEC is right now, and how would you describe moving forward?
Yeah, well, conference realignment, I think everybody is simultaneously being actively pursued and actively in pursuit. Every conference in recent history has been impacted except for the Ivy League around conference realignment. And maybe, you look at what happened to the Pac-12, you would think they would always be the pursuers, and all of a sudden they're the ones who are being pursued by other conferences. So I don't think anyone's immune to either end of that conference realignment. So the NEC, I would say, we are currently in the active pursuit, right? So we are eyeing expansion, just like every other conference is eyeing expansion. So you have to look at where are your options and what are your plans, A, B, C, and at what types of levels are you looking? So obviously we've just rearmed with Chicago State as a D1 institution. That was important for us to maintain the minimums around being an NCAA D1 conference and keeping our automatic qualifiers. And then the next step is what other, are there other D1 institutions out there that would be a good fit for the NEC? And are there D2 or even D3 schools that are out there? So you have to, look at the entire landscape and keep nothing off of the opportunities or options, and then go from there and figure out what's the best next step to position the NEC for future success and stability.
And when we look at that future success and stability, you have 8 members currently with Chicago State coming in 2024-25. Where ideally would you like to be at comfortably as a conference? We talk about the AQ, the automatic qualifier for each sport. I would love for you, when you speak on how many you would like to have numbers wise as full-time members, to explain to people out there, if you will, about the AQ and about how LeMoyne and Stonehill don't really, in the reclassification period, they don't count until they go through that 4-year period with the NCAA. So just where things need to be for AQ and what you envision, a number that you think, hey, this would be a comfortable place for us to be at.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, I think 10, getting to 10 would be great. There's always safety in numbers. So if you can get to 12 or even 14, you're seeing all the conferences around the country. It doesn't matter the level, all looking to kind of more is better than less. Now, obviously, there's a finite number of options to expand. But 10 gives us a little more stability and strength. And obviously if you get more, that's even better. But the more that you have, you still only have one at our level, right? You still only have one AQ slot, which is most probably the one school that will get into the NCAA championship. We're not a multi-bid league in most cases, women's bowling being probably the exception. And so you don't want to get so big that folks feel like they don't have an opportunity to be competitive in every sport and to earn that AQ. And so typically you need 6 teams, a D1, to get that AQ to the NCAA championship. And as you mentioned, in the reclassification, LeMoyne and Stonehill don't count towards that number. So we need 6 full D1 institutions to maintain those AQs, automatic qualifier, into the NCAA championship. So that's, that makes it a little more difficult, but it's a short-term pain for long-term gain, right? Like they can't help us right now, but we know they'll help us once they become full D1 members.
So where are we at with the addition of Chicago State as a full-time member in 24-25? Where are we AQ across the board?
Yeah, we will maintain all of our AQs, whether it's because we have the 6 minimum or because we enter into what they call the 2-year grace period. So if you have one less than the requirement, then you enter into a grace period. I think with Chicago State, we are good with all of our sports now. So we don't have to enter into the 2-year grace period, meaning you have 2 years to get back to the minimum number of 6 or 7 in basketball. 7 is the magic number in basketball. So I believe, and I should have looked at that before we got on the call, I believe that we're all good, that we don't have to jump into any of the grace periods with Chicago State coming on.
Well, and like you said, with the men's lacrosse plan, as I know LeMoyne fans were wondering about that. So in 24-25, some excitement with that. You have 17 associate members. I know that it's easier to go to those that have already said yes to you once to have them say yes again. That is one of the pillars of business that I followed my whole life, that if I'm working with a business, it's a lot easier to go back to them and say, hey, I'd like you to do more, than to go find somebody to do something for the first time. So the 17 members, and I know you got to be careful because they're in conferences and there's that respect that goes on. So I'm not gonna put you on the spot and be like, tell me all these, these inner working of the conversations. We can do that off the air and talk about that. But on the air, associate members, without you having to get specific if you don't want to, are you going to the people that have already said yes and kind of having that discussion saying, hey, we have 17 of you. Many of you have multi-sports that are a part of this conference. Why not just come right in? And some of them are having identifiers of rivalries that if they did come in, they would have an automatic team or teams that they could kind of jockey back and forth with. They can market that. So are we looking to the associates in expansion?
I think our associates have been fantastic partners for us. And we have associates for different reasons, right? In some cases, we have associates because we needed them to reach the AQ, right? So men's lacrosse is a great example for that. Other associate members we've brought in because we think it's the right thing to do for those student athletes on those campuses who didn't have access to NCAA championships. So, for example, we just brought in last June Binghamton for golf and tennis. Binghamton, America East doesn't sponsor those sports. The last thing we want is for schools to start dropping sports because they don't have access to championships. And so, we thought for the good of the sport and for the ability for us to provide those student athletes access to championships, that was the right thing to do. We didn't need to bring them in. We didn't need the number. Similarly, Niagara with women's bowling, they just added, they wanted a home. It made sense for us to give them that home so that bowling could continue to grow. And then with all the MEAC institutions, when they lost a couple of members to different conferences, all of a sudden, you had a number of sports where the MEAC fell short and was not able to secure the AQ through that grace period or through, other means. And so again, in most cases, we didn't need them for numbers, but it was what we thought a great way for us to provide access and to live up to our last strategic plan goal that I talked about earlier, which was support of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what better way to do that than to say, hey, HBCU student athletes shouldn't be shut out of access to championships and to have that experience. So I'll just say they've all been great partners. And as we look for expansion, like I said, anything's on the table, but I'm also not in particular to the MEAC. I understand the cultural significance of the MEAC and the conference and what that stands for and the need for that conference to stay fully committed to its charge. So, that's something that certainly is in the back of my mind, that there's, I've been the pursued, and you have to pivot and react, but I also don't want to be the pursuer that might, have catastrophic results for a culturally significant conference. So those are all things you have to keep in mind. But for now, we just really appreciate the associate member partnership, and I'll just leave, that's really our focus.
Well, and you've done the dance, Noreen, and I think you've done it well, because you've done it. It sounds, and everything that you just shared, with morals and values and integrity. That some people would say, "Hey, I'm taking care of me. I'm the commissioner of this conference. I don't care what happens to any other conference, as long as my conference is good." You said, "I understand the importance of this conference. I understand their history. I understand why they're here. I understand what they're meant to do." How do you do that delicate dance? Because I'm sure you have friends that are commissioners, you have friends that are leaders. So when you're having this conversation, and I've talked with commissioners all across the country in Commissioner Corner, and you being a part of that, where they have to go to people that they have good relationships with, and they have to say, somebody took from me, so I might take from you, but I don't want to cripple you. I want to make sure you're okay, but I want to make sure I'm okay. There's other conferences that say, "Hey, if we kill your conference, whatever, it's not our conference." But that's not what you're doing. We never thought the Pac-12 would be dead, but here it is, right? It's the one thing that's dying. It's almost gone. And I've dealt with this realignment where I've seen the crippled, and then I've seen those crippled grow, but then they have to take from another conference that will become temporarily crippled. How do you do the delicate dance back and forth, especially because if you're in a relationship business and not a transactional business, which I think is the better one to be, is the relationship over transactional? How do you have those conversations, and then also speak to that commissioner that maybe you had dinner with 3 weeks ago and say, "I don't want to hurt you. I want to help us. I'm trying to live in both worlds"?
Yeah, I mean, it is a delicate balance, and I have been on the side where I have to call a commissioner and say, we're unfortunately for you, but fortunately for us, we have a new member, and that member is coming from your conference. It's not easy, right? Because you have relationships, but it is at that point that becomes a transaction, that you have to take kind of the personal feelings out of it, because in the end, it is a decision based on, what's best for the conference or the institution at that point in time. So that, you want to do business and as transparently as possible, but we also know confidentiality is important as we work through membership decisions. And, I think I've done a great job in my career of sticking to my values and operating in a way that I feel like I can, be proud of the legacy. Does that mean I may at some point in time have to make a call that I don't want to make, or make decisions, or our conference makes decisions around next steps? I mean, never say never, obviously, but I'd like to say, as we've moved through this process, that I've managed to align the values with the actions. But a certain point in time, maybe there's a place in time where you don't have that choice.
And as we look forward, are we close to 10? Are we active? I can't see your sneakers right now. I imagine that they're on, Noreen, but what can we say about the coming weeks of the NEC? Is there a better than not chance that we need to be very close to the announcement social media, so to speak?
All I can say at this point is our membership committee continues to meet and continues to evaluate the landscape. And, whether or not that outcome is that we have a press conference, before the end of the year, next year, I really can't answer that question right now. I can just tell you that our membership is committed to expansion, and that we're looking, at every option, and hopefully, within a short time frame, we'll have some answers. But it's a ever evolving project. And if you talk to any conference commissioner at any point in time, and you ask them what's the standing agenda item on their presidents and ADs meetings, conference expansion and membership should always be on that list. And so everybody's looking at membership, whether or not it's like a coach's search. You always have a short list, right? If your coach were to leave, who would you want? You can't just go, oh my gosh, my coach left, now I've got to start figuring out how to replace them. It's the same thing. Like, conference realignment is a constant. It's not the exception. So if you're a conference and you're not talking about membership and potential new members, you're not doing your job.
Strong words, and I can appreciate them from Noreen Morris. Couple final points. LeMoyne in their first D1 campaign in their sports. And we know that we've been through the fall already. We're in the winter right now. We have seen men's and women's basketball. You talk about the NEC being a premier basketball conference, that is the leader of the focus here. And when we see that, LeMoyne women's basketball has gotten their first Division I win over Division I program as a D1 institution. LeMoyne men's basketball went to the West Coast and fought in 3 of the 4 to almost come away with 75% of those wins, pushed a bunch of teams, and were able to come away with their first D1 win as a D1 program versus a Division I institution. We also have seen women's soccer get the first D1 win for LeMoyne. We saw the first NEC win come from women's tennis, and we saw the men's soccer team advance to the postseason of the NEC in their first season as a D1 program. I would think that it looks like LeMoyne was ready.
Yeah, I mean, LeMoyne definitely, made some noise and some splashes in their first year, and that I give a lot of credit to those coaches, and more so to Bob Beretta and Linda Lemure for their leadership in that transition. So Bob, as you know, is 30+ year experience in D1 before he came over to LeMoyne. And so I think over the last couple of years, knowing that that's where they were eyeing, was making moves along the way to try to position yourself for success. And I'm really excited about the future of LeMoyne based on what you just said. They had lots of positive outcomes this fall, and you're seeing some of those right now in basketball. It's going to be a bit of a curve for them to get up to speed because the announcement was made pretty late, so recruiting was already done. And so I think as they get to recruit a full cycle, knowing that they're in a D1 conference, I think you'll see them continue to increase their competitiveness, and you'll see the successes in the win column as they move forward.
Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox.
If I had to describe it, I would like to say welcoming and kind of homey. Like, I feel home when I'm here.
Here's a special message from North Star Nutrition in North Syracuse and Nutrition Wave in Cicero on their very unique shakes and teas.
I always ask them, are you looking for a shake or a tea? Like, are you hungry or do you need a little bit of a pick-me-up? And then from there, I normally gear it towards whichever they prefer. So I say we offer full meal replacement shakes. They're 24 grams of protein, 21 vitamins and minerals. So the vitamins and minerals in that shake make it a full meal. And you'll stay full for about 4 or 5 hours. And if they want a tea, then I'll tell them that there's either 115 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. I would compare it to maybe 2 cups of coffee, and I explain all the benefits that are in the tea. Like, they have B vitamins to sustain your energy all day long. They have a tea for mental clarity and focus. They have a thermogenic tea to help boost your metabolism, burn calories. Aloe is great for nutrient absorption and digestion. And I say there's other flavors in it for the pretty colors and flavors. I always ask them, like, what's your favorite lollipop flavor? And then I'll go from there, and I'm like, well, believe it or not, there's less than a gram of sugar and it's good for you. The shakes, I say it's like your favorite candy bar or your favorite ice cream, because you've had them. It genuinely does not taste like a regular protein shake. This was the first yes that I've ever given, because I've always been like too shy or too scared to like talk to people or anything, and this just kind of really opened me up. I've stayed here so long because I just love seeing everybody's faces, having them like sit down at the bar and just telling us little tidbits about their life. You really have no idea what's going on in other people's life, and I feel like this job specifically really puts it into perspective and just kind of helps you enjoy other people's presence. As like a young adult and as a person, I have learned so much working here. Like, to me, it's way more than just shakes and teas.
For healthy drinks that taste amazing in a welcoming atmosphere, head to North Star Nutrition on 628 South Main Street in North Syracuse and Nutrition Wave on 6197 State Route 31 in Cicero. Open 7 days a week at each location. If LeMoyne and Stonehill continue to climb the ranks of the NEC, can we hope that these NCAA conversations on the 4-year hiatus, where are we at with that? I know you had said, you've sat on a committee before, you've had the discussions, things get tabled when they're trying to take care of other stuff. NIL and the transfer portal and all these things have come through. They're trying to have some parameters around the transfer portal. Is it on the table? Is it being discussed? Because there's so much realignment and reclassification, I would imagine the NCAA has to talk about this in order to respect the conferences that make it up. Where are we at right now?
Yeah, it is an active agenda item for the Strategic Vision and Planning Committee, which is the committee that is charged with managing Division I membership rules and regulations. I think, you know, as I read through Charlie Baker's letter that was released a day or two ago on creating his suggestion that we talk about creating another subdivision for those institutions that spend, you know, 50 million or more in their conference, you know, in their institutional athletic budgets, that I think that might make it easier for the membership to look at reducing the number of years it takes to get into Division I.
Yeah.
So there's been pushback from the highest levels of those, you know, Power 5 conferences that Division I's getting too big, and that, you know, those smaller schools are, you know, holding us back. Now, if they're able to kind of take the handcuffs off in how they spend their money, then they might be less concerned about how big, you know, and that dichotomy of the smallest versus the biggest in terms of budget. So that's my own personal, that's just me thinking over the last day or two without having talked to anyone else. I wasn't in Vegas. I wasn't at the SBJ and the NFF dinner, and lots of people were out there. So I know there's been lots of lobby talk and elevator talk about, like, what does that letter mean and how is it going to impact just Division I generally. I thought more so like, how does it impact the NEC? And maybe it's good news for us to be able to move forward on reducing the length of the reclassification period. So as you know, it's 4 years right now, which means, you know, if you're a 4-year student athlete, you don't have access to conference championships or the NCAA in your entire career as that freshman that enters when the school reclassifies. And there's been lots of, you know, posturing by certain schools and certain states about the waiver procedure and that, you know, not getting approved by the NCAA and potentially seeking legal relief. And, you know, that's all will be taken into account when the SBPC works through those. So I'm, you know, cautiously optimistic that we might come out of this with different rules around reclassification, but what those are, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said gives me even more reason to believe that what I said over 2 years ago of the NEC, or pardon me, of the SEC moving into its own conference, the Big Ten going to get those West Coast schools so that they could be enticing enough to go with the SEC, and then leaving everybody else to figure it out. When you talk about another subdivision, I said that. I said there are going to be 3 tiers to Division I. There's going to be the SEC and maybe the SEC Big Ten. There's going to be the other schools that are in the FBS, and then there's going to be the FCS. And hearing what you just said means that I feel like it's coming even more to light that this is where we're heading.
Yeah, well, apparently you had the crystal ball that nobody else had.
I mean, I didn't want to be right, Noreen, but I saw it. I mean, you see it. I had a lot of time too. It was COVID, right? So I was sitting here just thinking about everything. And as soon as Oklahoma and Texas made that move, I don't know, wheels started turning. I had conversations with, you know, with John Swafford of the ACC years ago about what autonomy means. Why did they choose that term? The fact that they could leave. And it just seems like the SEC and the Big Ten are a couple institutions away from saying this is locked. Like, this is done. We're going. Have a great life. And because the SEC, in all honesty, they don't need anybody. And I think the Big Ten was trying to make that move. But what I'm hoping, just like with Florida State not being in the college football playoff, and what that did to go against the rules of the CFP, when it happened to UCF and it happened to Cincinnati, there was a stink. I had a problem with it, but the stink nationally, people pushed it down. But with FSU, it comes up. And just like Oklahoma and Texas realignment that led to LeMoyne coming in to the NEC, my hopes is when it happens to somebody that they unfortunately give more to, which is wrong, but it happens to UCF, it happens to Cincinnati, there's not a big enough stink. I've always said if it happens to the quote unquote Power Five, which I can't stand that term, but if it happens there, that is when we might see change. And maybe the Florida States of the world and all these things going on are going to shift once again to help out the NEC. And I don't like the mid guy and the little guy and the big guy. I don't talk like that on my show. I don't see the NEC as here to there and whatever. I just know that unfortunately sometimes they listen to one more than the other. If it happens to the same institute, if it happens to the institutions the same way, they might listen here. But ultimately, maybe that helps. Maybe all the stuff with the SEC and the Big Ten expansion, maybe with Florida State, maybe somehow, some way it trickles to the NEC and we can get rid of this 4-year hiatus, which in all honesty is just a punishment to student athletes. I don't really know why it exists anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason for the transition, and that's to ensure that an institution is ready. It's a big jump to go from D2 to D1. Right. You've got increased scholarships, increased academic standards, increased recruiting rules. So it's a pretty heavy lift to go from D2 to D1, and to ensure that an institution is fully committed to doing that and can show and demonstrate that they actually are following through their plan. I do think there needs to be some sort of reclassification process where that's reviewed. Lindenwood, for instance, just announced in their second year of reclassification, I'm going to drop 10 sports. So, what does the SBPC do with that? Like, do they advance them? Do they pause them? Like, what do they do? Right. And so if you don't have any way to confirm that an institution is fully committed to a D1 experience at the level in which they entered, I think that could backfire. Right. And so I do think there's going to be some level of monitoring and accountability as you make the move. What does that look like, and what's the right length of time is the question.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because there is that side of it, which I totally understand. On the student athlete side, it's hard. And on if they're talented enough, or if some of these teams can get it done, I mean, I think they've proven that in the NEC that they can. So it's more so the check and balance of making sure that they're prepared to make the investment, because the last thing that we want to see is another university or college close its athletic programs or close its doors completely. And unfortunately, in my hometown and in my home state of New York, I have seen more than one. And that to me is wrong. The getting rid of opportunity to people is not the way we want to go. So, Noreen, I appreciate everything. You've answered all my questions. So I'm going to give you the last word. Looking at where we are today, looking at everything we have in the sports world, the NEC today is where? What do you want the world to know about the Northeast Conference in your final word?
My final word, the NEC is still committed to the role that we feel is most important. And that's to help develop our student athletes on and off the court and in the community. And we want our student athletes to be better prepared to leave their institutions and make a difference, make an impact in the world when they leave. So that is still our main focus. And I think our presidents are still 100% aligned with that. And we've had to pivot a lot in our history, but we've always pivoted for the better. And we've become stronger for it. So that's what I would say is the NEC is still on the rise and will still be stronger and better and continuing to meet our mission.
And as I said before, and I said when I first talked to you, Noreen, I believe that the NEC is in good hands with your leadership, and I have respected you for many, many years, and that respect has only grown. So thank you for the work that you've been doing.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, this is the most comfortable sweatshirt I have. So
It is.
thanks, Noreen.
Thank you.